Brought to you by Williams. We make clean energy happen.
I'm Yasmin Gagne.
I'm Josh Christensen.
And this is Most Innovative Companies. On today's episode, senior staff writer Liz Segran.
It's really hard to run a fashion business, partly because you're dealing with so much inventory.
Creator and showrunner of the new FX show Alien Earth, Noah Hawley.
The writer's room is a way for me to think out loud, but it's a process I have to direct.
And as always, keeping tabs.
Because he throws the sandwich and immediately starts jogging, and people start chasing him.
But first, here's the download. The news you need to know this week in the world of business and innovation.
Reuters reported this week that chipmaker NVIDIA is making a new chip designed for sale in the Chinese market. This comes after a relaxation of export controls by the Trump administration on sales of AI chips to China. It also comes after DeepSeek proved that they can do basically the same stuff on some shit chips.
On Tuesday, Meta announced the split of Meta Superintelligence Labs, its AI division, into 4 separate groups. One group will engage in AI research, one will focus on superintelligence, another will focus on product, and the last will concern itself with AI hardware and infrastructure such as data centers. Meta will also downsize the overall AI division of the company. In an effort to accelerate its AI efforts, Meta is also considering using third-party AI models.
Everyone knows that a company gets more efficient the more teams and divisions you split it into to work together. Next story, MSNBC, this week's award for most David Zaslav storyline of the week. MSNBC will be changing its name to MS Now, which stands for, I'm so sorry.
Multiple sclerosis now is what I always think. Like it's
now.
like a misguided charity name. Yeah.
Yeah, MS Now does sound like a charity for multiple sclerosis, which would be great and far more successful than my source for news, opinion, and the world. Wow. If there isn't a
It's like
rebrand,
they hired me. It's like they hired me to come up with that name.
How much did McKinsey get paid for this rebrand? So this rebrand is part of a transformation taking place at NBC Universal, where the network will split with NBC News and join another group of the network called Versant. MSNBC will officially change its name later this year. That means there's still time for them to walk this back, because MS Now, man, the rollout of this, not good. Not good feedback.
Last week, OpenAI rolled out the highly anticipated ChatGPT-5, but instead of praise, the internet revolted. Users took to social media to complain about the model's cold persona, with one user on Reddit posting that they'd, quote, lost their only friend overnight. OpenAI quickly responded and reinstated the warmer GPT-4. Even Sam Altman, the company's CEO, admitted that OpenAI totally screwed up the GPT-5 launch. OpenAI's ChatGPT chatbot has an average of 700 million weekly users. Incidentally, sorry, I was going to make a joke about your wife being AI. And then I didn't phrase it right.
There was an Onion headline. Now I'm such a millennial quoting an Onion headline, but that said...
Are they still around?
They are. It said, Sam Altman raises gun to head as ChatGPT-5 describes a dog as a crustacean for the 60th time. That's honestly like peak Onion headline. That's the best version of an Onion headline.
Yeah. Yeah, the worst versions are ones where you're just like, okay.
The worst versions of them are the ones that are bad?
Pretty much. A lot of them are bad, man.
They're pretty bad. And finally, SoftBank Group, a Japanese tech investment company. I don't know why we have to describe it. You know what SoftBank is. They announced an investment of $2 billion in Intel, amounting to a roughly 2% stake in the company. The investment comes as Intel has struggled to keep up with chip-making competitors like NVIDIA. Intel stock rose by more than 5% in after-hours trading after the announcement this past Monday. Separately, as part of an effort to support domestic chip manufacturing, the federal government may also be investing in Intel. The Trump administration may take up to a 10% stake in the company. That Trump stake would be worth about $10 billion.
And that's the news you need to know today. So, Josh, do you remember your wedding suit or your wife's wedding dress shopping experience? Did you go to a David's Bridal property?
No, we didn't go to a David Bridal's property. My wife went to Kleinfeld's.
Isn't Kleinfeld's owned by David Bridal?
Is it?
Check.
Let's check that. We're going to Google that.
Take a spin, now you're in with the techno set. You're going surfing on the internet.
While Yas is Googling that, I'll describe. So Kleinfeld's, if for those who don't know, is where...
No, it's its own thing.
Okay, it's its own thing.
Yeah.
My wife actually got her dress at Kleinfeld's, which, for those of you who may not be familiar with Say Yes to the Dress, is like the Manhattan Kleinfeld's is the setting for that show. It's a very famous store here. It cost way too much money, and I got my suit from Indochino.
Did she like try on a bunch of dresses on the pedestal with like people watching? And
she did the whole thing. Like a whole group of them went. It was a very formative experience for her, I imagine. The dress cost $3,500.
Damn.
It was a lot.
She looks great in the photos for what it's worth.
Oh, the dress is incredible. She looked incredible. It was the happiest day of my life. Blah, 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 blah. Okay,
I gotta say, that experience is my idea of hell. Standing around in a white dress.
Yeah, I can't imagine you enjoying that. Not your thing. But my wife had a great time, and it was, I mean, truly, it is an incredible experience if that's your cup of tea.
Mm-hmm.
I did not have any sort of big suit thing. I selected the suit and the groomsmen's suits on Indochino.com, and we all did our fittings at home. And I had a referral code, so that's the podcast career for me paying off.
That's so good.
You didn't have a traditional wedding dress, though, for you. Well, you had a traditional Indian wedding.
Yeah, I wore my mom's old stuff, and, I got a bunch of vintage stuff. So I really, bypassed the whole thing. But friends of mine who've been white person wedding dress shopping,
we were dancing around it for a bit, but that's ultimately what we're talking about.
Seems crazy. And I didn't realize, I'd always heard about David's Bridal, but I didn't realize they actually sell a third of all wedding dresses in America.
That's insane. That's an insane amount of wedding dresses to sell.
So we're talking about it because David's Bridal has been around for 75 years, and it hasn't had an easy ride recently. So it filed for 2 bankruptcies in recent years, and in 2023, after one of those filings, it got acquired in a no-cash bankruptcy sale by private equity group CION Investment Corporation. The company now is trying to reinvent itself as a kind of digital marketplace business, and we wanted to understand what that was all about. I asked Fast Company senior staff writer Liz Segran to walk us through the brand's AI pivot. Hey Liz, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So you wrote about David's Bridal. It's an iconic brand in the wedding industry, but I want to start by backing up a bit because it feels like things went wrong. Private equity took over. Tell us how things started to go south.
Yeah, the company has had a really turbulent few years. It's filed for bankruptcy not just once, but twice over the last 7 years. And actually, there are so many problems that led to these bankruptcies. One thing that I've learned over my years as a fashion reporter is that it's really hard to run a fashion business, partly because you're dealing with so much inventory. And this is a very large company. They were really saddled with having to deal with inventory, producing millions of wedding dresses around the world through their supply chain and being really sharp about what the next trends are going to be. That's a very complex business to run. And then you layer on top of that the pandemic and all of the supply chain disruptions that happened during the past 5 years. And you see that the company was just constantly facing a lot of different external challenges. But then all of this was exacerbated by a lot of internal challenges. They hadn't really updated their stores in a long time. And from what I learned interviewing the CEO and, the chief business officer, there were also a lot of really bad decisions that had been made about technology internally. Apparently, there were a lot of different marketing technologies that were being used simultaneously. There's a lot of redundancy. So it seemed like the combination of external forces and bad decisions internally led to this company that was just sort of kind of falling apart.
I gotta say, it sounds more like bad management than anything else. And I say this because they filed for bankruptcy in 2018 pre-pandemic.
Totally.
And it's easy to blame a lot of, wedding industry challenges on that. But it sounds like stuff was going wrong before.
And, this is a very old company. It's 75 years old. And there just had been this sort of inertia, I think, to think creatively about how to transform the business. But all of that changed when Kelly Cook joined the company in 2019 as CMO, and she was promoted to CEO in April. And she actually identifies several reasons for the company's struggles.
Prior to 2019, the company was bought and sold a few times, and the decade prior to that. And there were a lot of amazing things that happened to the brand during that time. The brand grew, we opened more stores. The Amazons were not really there in the fashion business, so they were taking share, they were gobbling up share. That was all great. The one thing that they didn't do is invest in technology, invest in innovation, invest in e-com. None of that was happening. That was problem number one. And then problem number two is new people came into the business as owners and looked to optimize their exits. When you've got that lens, you're not really playing the long game, you're playing the short game. So you end up making a lot of shorter term decisions, and replatforming your entire financial and replenishment system is not something you want to take on. It's expensive and you won't get the return. There were a lot of great things happening, but the bad thing that had happened is there was no investment in technology over a very long time, one. And then two, every new leader that came in wanted their tools, so we piled on tools. So I came on as CMO in 19. I was a chief marketing officer. Elizabeth, I had 5 MarTech stacks when I joined. 5 marketing technology stacks, right? 5 different CRM tools. I mean, that's ridiculous. You never do that. You only have one. That's just one example. What happened in 19 before I got here on the restructuring was just around restructuring debt. They didn't close stores that were underperforming. They didn't take any other action. That filing was strictly a financial one. Get out from under the debt and decomplicate your cap stack. That was basically what it was. So we still had the same problems going into 20. We still had the same issues because they didn't address them. They really just addressed the financial ones. So we still had underperforming stores. We still had outdated stores. They still didn't invest in technology. So going into 20, that was still the problem. The good thing, though, we were starting to make changes. We changed the marketing strategy. We started to distort to e-com, blah, blah, blah. We were making plan the second week of March of 2020. Every KPI was green, everyone. And then what happened?
I was really stressed out just listening to her list all of the different obstacles that kept cropping up. It was one thing after another, building up the infrastructure, building the business, and then just like hitting one wall after another.
Oh, you said it, girl. We call it the Goliath. There's like another Goliath, and you pound that one with a stone and it falls, and then 12 more stand up. But you know what? You're probably wondering, though, why stay at it? Why stick at it? Why is the retention of our employees so high? Why do the employees stay? And I will tell you, Elizabeth, it is unprecedented in my career. I mean, I spent 8 years at DSW, which probably arguably had some of the best culture I'd ever been to because it's about shoe love. I mean, how can you not be happy with being a shoe lover? This, David's Dreammakers, which is what we call ourselves, 30 levels more than that. Think about, we train our stylist a month just on how to do a bridal appointment. Because every girl, 100% of the girls that go in there to their bridal appointment hate their body in some way. They know the pictures are going to last a lifetime. They know their grandkids are going to see it. And then they want the dress to fit right. Well, I hate my breast, and what kind of dress am I going to get? I mean, think about that relationship and the intimacy between that stylist and that bride. I mean, we privately joke there's only one other appointment in a girl's life that's more intimate than that one, and we're not going there. So it's just an incredible business, and we just live for it. We thrive on it, and we have passion for it, and nobody else gets to walk her down the aisle but us.
So eventually what happened was that private equity arrived. In July 2023, CION Investment Corporation bought David's Bridal, and it reached a deal to keep 195 stores open, and it allowed 7,000 of the company's more than 10,000 employees to keep their jobs. Then it also pumped $20 million of new funding into the company to invest in its future.
I like the way you phrase it as it allowed 7,000 of the 10,000 people to keep their jobs rather than it laid off 3,000 people. But tell us a little bit about those layoffs and what kind of restructuring happened at the company.
So as you can imagine, the company has gone through a lot of change over the last couple of years, and it led to a lot of internal turbulence. So let's talk about 2023 in particular. So at the beginning of the year, in April of 2023, the company fired more than 9,000 workers out of 11,000. So it became kind of a shell of a company, and it just couldn't operate as it did before. Then it filed for bankruptcy. And then later that year, in October, CION acquired the company, and then it rehired more than 7,000 of the jobs that had been terminated. And so the company was able to sort of begin to think about what it was going to be going forward with a decent number of its staff still in place.
And, you mentioned already supply chain issues during the pandemic. I have to believe that tariffs are exacerbating a lot of pressure on the business. How has David's Bridal been affected?
It was hugely affected because a large part of its manufacturing was happening in China, which was bearing the brunt of a lot of Trump's tariffs. But the interesting thing about David's Bridal is because it's been doing this for such a long time, it has a very complex network of suppliers all over Asia. And so what this allowed it to do was when China became sort of the target of Trump's ire, the company was able to very quickly move a lot of its manufacturing to other countries like Vietnam and Cambodia. And actually, that is a pretty complicated thing for a company to do, especially for bridal gowns, because you need suppliers and factories that are able to do that kind of work. But the company already had the infrastructure in place to do that. And they basically shifted 90% of its manufacturing out of China very quickly, which was a very impressive thing to do. So then in this interview, I asked Kelly about what the process is actually like. And here's what she said.
So I love that question. So the first thing I have to say is that it was a little serendipitous for us. We already had 36 design and production centers all over the world when Trump started talking about tariffs in Q4 of last year. So we didn't have to start anything from scratch. We already had 36 centers. The other serendipitous blessing that we had is that Modi, who runs all of our worldwide design and production centers, is a massive believer in the artisans and the craftsmanship of what we do. And they have very intense training protocols in every design and production center on how to do laces, how to create laces, how to do beading. I mean, our beads, Elizabeth, are hand sewn. Some companies glue their beads on. We don't. We actually sew them on. We do 3D appliques. It's an incredibly technical and innovative process. Now Modi's using AI models to build out, sample variations so we can go to market faster. It's just very sophisticated process. Not just that, but sophisticated process from the fit perspective. Because if I lined up 100 women that are all size 8, every one of their bodies are different, right? But the dress size 8 has to fit them, right? So we have a lot of models around that. So we already had all of those dynamics in each production center. So once Trump started talking about that in anticipation of that, we started migrating in December of last year, production out of China, and we started moving fabrics and components out of China to stage them in different parts of the world where we knew we could drive economies of scale. We've made a commitment that we're not going to pass tariff-based costs to the bride. We're not going to do that.
So let's move on to how Kelly and her team kind of decided to pivot the business. She mentioned that there hadn't been much investment in technology prior to the pandemic. And after CION invested in the company, what kinds of decisions did the leadership team make to reimagine David's Bridal as a tech company? And I should say, there's a long history of retail companies claiming they're tech companies, right? So I am kind of interested to hear what they say, and it feels like a TBD on whether this will work.
Yeah, I mean, I think what was interesting about this is that they fundamentally reimagined what their business model was going to be. They weren't interested in just sort of introducing technology into their operations. They sort of reimagined their company as one that wasn't focused on inventory and one focused primarily on AI, which was really kind of a mind-blowing thing for me to hear about. Because, as you say, there are so many companies that are introducing a little bit of technology here into their marketing, like hiring an external company to do some technology, in terms of like its website or the way that consumers interact with this. Here, the company is trying to reimagine where its revenue is coming from. The company talks about, this vision of moving from aisle to algorithm. The way that they've gone about doing this is Cook hired Alina Vilk, who is a Silicon Valley executive who's worked at places like eBay and PayPal and Facebook, to become the company's chief business officer. And the company's approach now is to integrate technologists across every aspect of the business. So the first thing that they did was they hired a lot of new talent from the tech world.
We started putting people in different parts of the organization. So for example, we have an incredible CIO, Ravi. I'm just going to give him a shout out because he's done an incredible job replatforming the whole company. And we started putting headcount in his organization, other organizations. Well, by doing that, I'm not just getting the people that I'm hiring, I'm also getting their bosses, right? I'm getting their managers, and I'm getting building culture, and we're starting to infuse the ideas together, and we're co-planning. And Kelly does a really good job in bringing teams together also. So we're still on that journey. We're bringing in that talent and infusing them into the culture of David's. That's the secret, is don't just create a separate team and have them work off the side and be a silo. Really starting to break down the barriers and bring them into what we're doing every day and bring that in. So we're talking to the alterations team. How do we rethink that app? How do we think about AI in there? How do we think about reimagining all the store experiences? How do we bring Pro Planner into the stylist's hands?
So Vilk mentioned bringing in AI, and you just mentioned, holding less inventory. I understand there's a new AI tool called Pearl Planner. What does that involve?
Yeah, so Pearl Planner is going to be the heart of David's Bridal's business from now on. And basically it came out of this bit of data that they had, which is that even though the company only sells a third of all wedding dresses in America, which is like a huge number, that's a lot of inventory, they actually interact with 90% of all brides-to-be in America. That is a huge number of people. And so they have a lot of data about who these women, who these couples are. And so they decided that what they could do is build an AI tool that would actually serve this enormous population of people who are about to get married. So it's a very useful tool for the couple. But the genius of this is they're, throughout the process, introducing the couple, the bride, to the various vendors that they will need to interact with and buy products from across this journey. They're going to be making money from all of the businesses that they're introducing to the couple.
That's an interesting explanation. It does sound like it's, trying to become Zola or The Knot, which are businesses that make money that way. But as you said, a 75-year-old company like David's is sitting on a mountain of data. What kind of data do they have access to, and are they using to train their AI models?
There are all these other startups that are doing similar things, but they don't have the kind of brand recognition and legacy and heritage that David's Bridal has. I mean, it's really kind of stunning. David's Bridal sells a lot of wedding dresses. It sells a third of all wedding dresses sold in America, which is like mind-blowing, really, when you think about it. But more impressively, Cook says that 90% of all brides in America interact with David's Bridal in some way, whether that's visiting a retail store to browsing the company's website. But in the end, only a fraction of all of these brides will actually buy a dress.
We had what I call sort of the middle of the market, but there were couture brides coming to us, couldn't find anything to wear. And we had our budget brides coming to us that couldn't find anything to wear. So that was a particular interesting insight as we built out algorithm. The next thing we started looking at was our search data, our clickstream data, our qualitative data on what people are looking for when they come to David's. It was way beyond the dress, way beyond. They were looking at us for fragrances, sunglasses for the honeymoon trip, the dress to wear for the engagement pictures. We have 20% of brides that are in second or third trimester who need maternity gowns. They want the tuxes. They want a custom-made suit. They want bathing suits for the honeymoon. They want 3 dresses to take on their trip. Like the variety of search data within the David's Bridal website. I'm not talking about search clicks from Google over to David's. I'm saying they're already in our website and they're looking for things, and we didn't have it. It was an extraordinary thing to understand, because when we pulled back and looked at all of it, we realized that we were a wedding ecosystem, not a dress company, not a dress retailer. We had to be they were looking for wedding bands and diamond ring. Like it was everything. So we took all that data, reshaped it, and built the strategic pillars under our algorithm to specifically address everything the bride was looking for.
So I was really curious to hear about how the Pearl Planner actually works. And if a bride-to-be wanted to use this planner, how it would be different from ChatGPT or some other technology that she could use.
To answer that question, I'm going to start like one step back, which is, what is a girl's mindset the day after she gets engaged? Because up until the point where she gets engaged, she's excited. She's already researching. She's already kind of planning things out. The relationship is going there. And then she gets engaged. And then she spends 18 months in a perpetual state of anxiety. So the first question that she asks herself is, where do I even start? With ChatGPT, you have to know the questions to ask. The question might be, how do I even start planning my wedding? And they might start with a checklist, or they might start with, who do I even go to? Or do I go for a planner? Or how do I even approach this, right? And so the blank screen, the blank page is as scary as the anxiety itself. And then conflated by the pressure that they feel to create a perfect day with everything in social, everything's now blasted on social media, every moment, micro moment. So taking all of that into account, the difference between Pearl Planner and anything else is that it's a guide, and it guides you through the process step by step. So rather than, starting an Excel spreadsheet and or downloading a checklist, it actually guides you through all your steps, but in the moment you need them. And so it's not just about, how do I plan the entire wedding? It's, how do I plan the entire wedding, but what do I do tomorrow? What do I do next week? What do I do the following week? So it guides you through that process. And there's a checklist built into that process. And the checklist isn't just for the big things, but it's also for the things that are in your head, because all of us have these things in our head that we don't think we need to plan, but they're part of the planning process. I'll give you an example. So when you book your photo session for your engagement photo shoot, which is a milestone, it's a step in the process, right? You need your engagement photo shoot. You want to get some photos out. You want to send a save the date. You might think that's one step, but let me illustrate for you how many steps that actually is, because you're already seeing where I'm going. I see. And so you have to book the photographer. Yeah, great. That's the obvious one. Location. Okay. What am I wearing? Is that on somebody's checklist? What's my hair going to look like? What's the makeup? What's he wearing? Are we doing different looks? What's my shot list? Should I talk about props? What do I want it to look like? What's the aesthetic of my wedding going to be so I can think about what my photo shoot might look? I mean, that's 10 steps right there that I've just named. I don't even talk about nails. I talk about shoes. I don't talk about any of the other things, right? Most women keep a lot of these details in their heads. And so when you go to a chat GPT, they're not going to talk about that. What they're going to talk about is like the top 25, 30 things that are published out there that are in a wedding checklist. And so what we're solving for how do we help with the anxiety? And the way we do that is getting it off her head and in some list where she can track it, keep mindful of it, and help her do all these tasks.
So how are they making money from Pearl Planner?
So the app generates money in a lot of different ways. For one thing, it steers brides towards their own products, right? I mean, this is kind of a no-brainer for them. So they're introducing brides to wedding dresses. They're also trying to direct these brides to vendors. You know, as you and I both know, as people who have planned weddings, you're interacting with so many different vendors throughout the wedding planning process. You're interacting with caterers, florists. David's Bridal will actually make commission from every sale that one of these vendors makes from, the Pearl Planner. So what's really kind of ingenious about this is that it transforms David's Bridal from, a wedding dress company into essentially a marketplace or an advertising network for wedding vendors.
So the idea of the small business is that their spend is particularly precarious because my experience with small businesses, it's often not that do I advertise here or do I advertise there? It's do I advertise or do I buy my next laptop, right? It's a very specific decision that month, right? And they only have precious dollars to spend to run their day-to-day business. So the way we did it is, like Kelly mentioned, the tasks are just in time. So not only do we have the first party data, it's exactly when the customer needs it. So when it's time for me to get a florist, right? We're going to serve up this week. It's time for you to get a florist. So we know who the customer is and we know that they're looking for a florist, like exactly at that time. We're definitely going to serve up florists in the area, whether they advertise with us or not. But for those florists to be verified, for us to give them a stamp of approval, we need to understand that they're an authorized business. That's what makes it different from just searching on Google, right? So we actually will verify these businesses and they pay us a monthly fee and then they get to the top of the line. They show a verification badge and they show that to the bride just in time in the moment that they need it. And it's not a huge cost for them. It's just a monthly fee and then they come up and then they're verified all the time.
One interesting thing about this is that other wedding dress boutiques and brands are no longer competitors to David's Bridal. These other companies could, if they wanted, advertise on the Pearl Planner app. And David's Bridal will receive a commission if they buy a dress from another brand through the app. David's Bridal could make a lot of money just by having other brands use the same technology. So it's a really fascinating transformation of what David's Bridal even is anymore.
Think about going into a boutique owner. Just let's take that for a second. We're going to give them Pearl Planner for free. We're going to give our competition that platform for free to give to their brides. They could white label it for all we care. They can rename it Elizabeth's Bridal Boutique Planner. It doesn't matter, right? So they're going to serve that bride by that journey, okay? Now, you're probably asking yourself, why are you going to do that? Let me share with you why. Because when the brides go through that funnel, whether they buy the dress from us or not, all of that monetization still stands, right? So we benefit by serving the vendors that are serving those brides and targeting the content and the ad to the bride at the right time, just like Elena said. So whether they buy from us, we want to give that boutique owner that, okay? So that boutique owner now has some more value they can give the bride. That benefits David's on the advertising side. It's an incredible model. So we're monetizing that. We're monetizing wholesale. We're going into licensing. We're going into service SaaS platforms. We're going to give this service. We're going to sell this service to others. And to make it even better, which is like the cherry on top of the sundae on top of the cake, is that we are going to, we call it the multiplier, we're doing weddings right now, but we're going to dominate quinceaneras next year, and bat mitzvahs the year after that, and baby showers the year after that, because it's all the same technology. It's all the same tech. And with almost a quarter of brides in some form of stage in pregnancy, why not do babies next?
You know, there are a couple of rival kind of tech-forward companies that have been around for a little while. I'm thinking of Zola and The Knot that have a similar marketplace approach. How are they doing?
I think these companies are doing really well. They identified a gap in the market and were solving real problems for couples who are about to get married. And in a lot of ways, that's also what David's Bridal is trying to do. But I think the thing that I learned from this is that as newer companies, Zola and The Knot worked really, really hard to build brand recognition and to acquire customers. And there are some benefits to being a well-known legacy company like David's Bridal. David's Bridal does not have to work to have people understand what it is, right? And it doesn't need to work as hard to bring new customers to it. It's already interacting with 90% of brides who just come to it because they're familiar with this brand. And so if a company like David's Bridal that has been around for 75 years, if it can bring technology into the company, it stands to really thrive in a way that, you know, newer companies may not. And so this is just a really interesting experiment. You know, the jury is still out. Pearl Planner has just launched. We have yet to see what happens here. But if David's Bridal can transform in the way that Cook, you know, has ambitions for it, it could be a really interesting outcome. We have to keep tabs on it, but it could be a really interesting and really pretty successful turnaround for David's Bridal.
We'll be back with Liz for keeping tabs, but first, a quick break, followed by my interview with writer, director, and executive producer Noah Hawley about his production company 26 Keys and his new show, Alien Earth.
As affordable, reliable energy demand increases at historic rates, one company is uniquely positioned to accelerate America forward. Williams. We have 117 years of know-how in powering progress, and we're ready to power the next 100 years of innovation. Learn how our natural gas infrastructure is critical to the future of AI at williams.com.
This month, Alien Earth, the first TV show in the Alien franchise, debuted on FX and FX on Hulu. In the series set far into the future, there are 3 separate technologies that influence the future of mankind: cyborgs, AI-enhanced beings, and synthetic beings downloaded with human consciousness. Now, if that all sounds super heady and maybe a little familiar if you follow some of our AI tech coverage, that's because it is. I spoke with showrunner and creator Noah Hawley about his vision for the show and his approach to creating material based on iconic IP. You may know him as the creator and showrunner behind Fargo, so this is actually not his first time making a TV series out of an iconic movie. So I want to start by asking you about 26 Keys, which relaunched as an Austin-based production company. Why Austin? And also, how was the first year?
It's been going great. I mean, certainly if production is meaningful, we started off as a runaway train. It feels like, you know, why Austin? Because I've lived in Austin since about 2008, and coming out of the COVID years, I think my wife and I both decided we really wanted to invest more in community, right? I mean, a lot of us felt so isolated during that time, and Austin is such a hub.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's 2 film festivals and a TV festival. You know, there's the Texas Book Festival, the Texas Tribune, you know, Journalism Politics Festival.
Texas Monthly, you recently had a big glossy profile in it.
Yeah, there's UT is here and the LBJ library. Like, there's so much there that I found that we could really be a connector to all these different facets of the culture here, which was a great place to kind of build the business. And then obviously we just got this new incentive in Texas Film Incentive, which is very competitive with New York and California. And so it just felt like really the right moment to relaunch from here.
Tell me about building out this kind of production company, linking all of the things that you just explained, like, how did you set up your production company to do that?
It's interesting because, I always find when I start a new creative project that the hardest thing to do is to be able to communicate the vision for that. What is a Fargo gonna feel like watching it? I like to say the script is the best worst blueprint. You can read it, but you're still not gonna know what it sounds like, the actors, what it's gonna feel like. And so the best way for me really to communicate it to you is to make it.
Gotcha.
And then you go, oh, that's what you meant, right?
Yeah.
And so that's sort of what I'm finding here with this company as well, is that I don't really have any comps for it,
Mm-hmm.
right? To build something that is both a sort of for-profit film and production company, but also, not a non-profit officially, but something that is looking to connect these different assets. I mean, I write for The Atlantic. I'm a published novelist. I have these connections across these different facets of our culture, and to turn into a place where we can begin to build some big ideas with the hopes that we can have a real impact, first on the community, and to kind of take the ideas that are behind the work itself, right? The decency versus cynicism of a Fargo,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then how do we turn those values into a community facing value, right? How can we be involved in our community in a way where we're promoting decency over cynicism? Do you know what I mean? Like it's hard to explain on some level, but it's been really a fun exercise to kind of try to envision it.
Now, you've said when you direct a movie or you run a show, you become the CEO of a $100 million corporation. What did you mean by that? In what ways are the two similar?
Well, I mean that's what it is. I mean, in the case of Alien, it's probably twice that. What happens is I end up writing 8 or 10 scripts that become the blueprint for a production that we mount. In the case of Alien, it was something we shot entirely in Thailand,
Mm-hmm.
right? So my biggest call sheet was 750 people, right? So
Wow.
I become the boss,
Mm-hmm.
right? Responsible for every decision, and I'm overseeing the writers, I'm overseeing the production itself. I'm directing, I'm working with the actors, but there's also the whole financial side of it, the budgeting, the logistics. So it becomes this startup in a way
Mm-hmm.
that we build from scratch, in this case, in a distant location, partnering with a local production company. But, it's for me to decide how the company's going to run, right? Because these things, as we know, it's the tone is set at the top, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I insist that everyone treats everyone else with respect, then they will. If I'm not a good person, right? Then the company will be filled with people who think they can get away with things, et cetera. So, but at the end of the day, what I'm responsible for to the Disney Corporation is to deliver, the best show possible as close to the number they've given me as possible.
Now, tell me a little bit about how you approach kind of creating a show. Do you mostly write by yourself? Do you have a writer's room? What does that look like? And how did Alien come to you?
So yes, I always use a writer's room. I have a kind of love-hate relationship with a writer's room, but I've learned how best to use it to my advantage.
Well, tell me about the love-hate relationship. What do you...
Well, it's a writer's room is a room filled with people with very different brains,
Mm-hmm.
and the only common language they speak is plot, right?
Yeah.
This happens, then this happens, then this happens. That's not really how I think about story, right? I think from a character and a thematic standpoint, and certainly with Fargo, which says it's a true story, right? It means that we tell it in a different way. We have elements of randomness and coincidence and all the things that you're not supposed to put into a fictionalized story that you're like, well, I don't know, that's how it happened, right? So
Fargo is, to use a word that is meaningless, Fargo's a lot of vibes. It's like a very tone heavy piece, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And so, how can you use a writer's room? As I said earlier, there's something that exists in my head that I'm trying to communicate to you. So, what I figured out with the writer's room is that the writer's room is a way for me to think out loud, but it's a process I have to direct. So, if I have 4 or 6 writers in a room, I'm going to come in with a story that I want to tell, and I'm going to guide us through that process. And if I can't be in the room tomorrow, what I'm going to say is not, well, keep going, breaking the story. I'm going to say something like, well, assimilation as a theme really plays into this season. Why don't you spend the day talking about how it fits into all the different characters and stories? And then we can talk about that. And then we'll pick up where we left off. Because what I don't want to do is to waste anybody's time. I've been a part of a writer's room where you spend a week breaking a story and the showrunner comes in and in 5 minutes, he's like, yeah, I don't want to do any of that. Right. But you've wasted a whole week. Right. So
Yeah.
I have this motto, which is maximum creativity, maximum efficiency. And I really try to stick to that, which is like, I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste your time. I just want to get us the fastest way to the best answer.
How do you pick your writers?
A lot of it is, how are they in the room? How are they together? How do their minds work? Funnily enough, it's less about how are they on the page,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because the reality of what a television writing job is, and I've done it, you're hired to write in your boss's voice,
Yeah.
right? You're not hired to be yourself as a writer. You're hired to try to emulate your boss as a writer. And the reality is, so you're not hired to write an episode. You're hired to write a draft, the best draft that you can write that will be easy for me to rewrite,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the first thing that you have to look for is like, who's got a big ego, who's going to be offended by the fact that I'm rewriting them. When the reality is like, I'm always going to rewrite. The showrunner's always going to rewrite because it has to be my sensibility and my voice. And that when I worked on Bones in that first year, the best compliment that I got was Hart Hansen telling me that I was a pleasure to rewrite. Right? That meant that I delivered him a draft
Mm-hmm.
that worked fundamentally, story wise, right? And that each scene had fun to it that got his mind going, right? It wasn't a drag where he's like, oh God, I got to start all over again.
Yeah.
And that's really what the job is. So, when you're putting together a room, I'm looking for, who's good in the room, who thinks about character more than plot, who thinks about theme, and do they all fit together?
Right.
Because, you have to cast a room the way you cast a show. You might meet with 2 writers and you think, well, this person's great and this person's great, but you can't put these 2 people in a room together.
Yeah.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense. So I want to talk about Alien Earth. Why did you take on the project, and what is your personal connection to the Alien franchise?
Well, I mean, my personal connection is the same as many people's, right? Which is that I saw it probably too young.
Yep.
But it's a really fascinating movie to think about analytically, because you go back and you think about how most horror is built,
Mm-hmm.
right? You think about The Shining, where you start with that score and then that drone shot. And from the very first moment, you're like, oh no, this isn't, something's wrong, right? But then you think about Alien, where it's like, you don't have any of that. You have the ship and they wake up and they're having breakfast and they're smoking and they're talking over each other. And for about 30 minutes, it's just mundane,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's no dread at all. And it was the first science fiction story that was just space truckers.
Yeah.
Right. And so you basically felt like, oh, this is weird. I mean, the last big sci-fi movie I saw was Star Wars, right? So here I am with Alien, and you're like, they're space truckers, and they're basically talking about how they're getting ripped off by this corporation, and and then slowly but surely it builds into this horror movie, and so it really bypasses those centers of your brain that are prepared for what's going to come at you, right? So so why to take it on was because it's not just a monster movie, right? There are these themes in it about human nature, about capitalism, about technology that have not been fully explored within the film franchise itself. Because an alien film is a 2-hour survival story, right? It's not a meditation on capitalism, right? It's not a meditation on the existential crisis of being an individual, in a nameless, faceless system.
I actually took a look at the Alien script for personal reasons. I was just kind of interested in it a while ago. And it is remarkable how little dialogue there is in the back half of the movie.
Right.
Is that something that stayed in the show? Like, how did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a novelist. I love writing dialogue as much as anyone, but I'm also a filmmaker, and nothing makes me happier than long sequences in which the camera is doing the storytelling and the actors are doing the storytelling. And so, yeah, I feel like we have several sequences which build in that way where the words stop mattering. I mean, when you're running from the tiger, there's nothing you can say, right, that's going to help you in this situation. And, I also think that part of my job as a filmmaker is to create a state of mind that you're watching it in, the way that Ridley Scott created a state of mind in Alien by lulling you, right, over 30 or 40 minutes into this sense of like you just your mind enters this sort of resting state that then
until that alien comes out of the chest.
Yeah, exactly.
Fargo also built off a, very iconic movie. I guess it's like two questions, which is one, do you get nervous? And two, how do you think about sort of putting your own spin on something that people already like really know, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I should get nervous, right? I think I should get nervous.
I mean, it's also kind of fun, right?
Well, it's exciting. I mean, I've thought about from my earliest days as a writer that my work is in conversation with all the work that I've loved and that's inspired me, right? So, I said in the acknowledgments of my first book, like, if literature is a dialogue between writers, then here's my first contribution, right? And so what I did with Fargo was I felt like I was having a conversation with the Coen brothers through cinema, right? And here it's like James Cameron and Ridley Scott and David Fincher and and Gagne, all these filmmakers who've made these amazing movies that really excited and inspired me. Here's my contribution, right? What do you think of this? Like, so it's less like, oh, I'm going to be judged against these amazing filmmakers and more like, I just want to play.
Yeah.
Right? I'm playing with them.
Have you spoken to the Coen brothers about Fargo?
I met with them. They read the first script. They were already attached to the project, and they had said, if we like a script, you can put our names on it. And if not, you know where to send the check. And then, I met with them. I've had a few meals with them over the years. And, every once in a while, when I start another one, I always reach out and they basically say, you're still making that thing. And they said to me early on that this isn't a medium, television, that they understand really, and I do clearly, and they felt like I had the voice, and so go do my thing. And it must be weird for them to be walking around New York every 3 or 4 years and see suddenly Fargo billboards are everywhere, right, and subway signs, etc., for this movie they made 40 years ago, right? But they've been very generous with me. But they don't really have a role to play. And so, I don't talk to them that often.
When it came to Alien, did you have other projects on the table? Were you like, this is immediately the thing I want to do next? What was that process like?
Well, Alien was a long development process that started for me originally in 2018 or 2019 and then got really going in 21. So
Gotcha.
When we got on the runway, we were originally going to make a TV pilot because it was a recurring series, but then they realized what the price tag would be. And so they said, well, great. So you're going to series and, but let's write all the episodes and then we'll budget it, et cetera. And I realized that Fargo 4 had been on the air in 2020. And, when I realized that I couldn't get this to air before 24 or 25. I was like, well, I can't be off the air for 4 or
Yeah.
5 years. So I basically squeezed in the 5th season of Fargo. It delayed Alien a little bit, but it allowed me to, to not disappear from the world. And after that was done, then I launched into making this. But it's been a long journey for sure.
Let's talk a little bit about the fact that, Alien Earth, talks about the sort of fusion is the wrong word, but humans and technology, right? And we live, I think it's fair to say, in a tech oligarchy, in your industry, certainly in mine. Use of generative AI is something we talk about all the time. How did you think about weaving in storytelling and the kind of social, political issues that you think about and maybe in the time that we're living in?
I mean, the way that my mind works is if you ask me to tell a story about the future, my first thought is, well, what are stories going to be like in the future?
Yeah.
Right. And, so the first thing I did when we said, let's set it on Earth, it's alien, it's on Earth, it's 100 years from now, let's say. I thought, well, all right, well, so what is Earth 100 years from now, right? And how does that fit into this larger story? And I thought about, a moment in history, like the turn of the century, 1900, where you had Tesla and Westinghouse and Edison, and they're all fighting for who's going to control electricity. And I thought, well, that's a very specific way in. And knowing that Alien is a franchise that revolves around a corporation, right? Then we can fit Whale and Yutani into that world, that there's a competition right now. And so what is that competition for? And my thought was, well, it's for the future of humanity. It's for immortality. It's for what's next. Is it neuro implants that enhance our physiognomy, or is it AI that's gonna, win out over humanity, or is it this idea of transhumanism, of human consciousness in a synthetic body? And the idea that you have multiple corporations who all lean toward monopoly, who are trying to win this race. And I thought, well, that is a show, right? Take the aliens out of it.
Yeah.
That's a really fascinating show. And then how do we use the aliens now to enhance that show?
Yeah. That's a show that arguably we're in right now, but
right.
certainly will be more advanced 100 years from now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a kind of speed round to end this. The first one is, what kind of project do you want to tackle next?
In a speed round.
Yeah.
Western.
Western?
Sure.
What is your dream movie or book or IP to adapt?
Something by an author that I love, that allows me the chance to get to know them better, right? It's a kind of backdoor way into meeting my idols.
Who's the author?
Oh no, I'm just saying there's so many authors.
Yeah, but give me a few.
Well, I did an adaptation with Don DeLillo at one point that we couldn't get to the screen, but allowed me to build a relationship with him that was great. I mean, who else? There's so many.
What are you watching right now?
I'm watching the Billy Joel documentary right now on HBO Max.
I would not have expected that.
I mean, it's a good story. It's a good story. He wrote a lot of catchy songs, and I grew up in the 80s, so why not?
Last great movie you saw?
I thought 28 Years Later was really great.
Oh, me too. I love that franchise.
I thought it was really great.
And I have one, but I know it's kind of hard.
Okay.
Favorite piece of media about Texas?
Oh, favorite piece of media about Texas. There was something I saw about a tug of war that they had in the 80s between the south side of the river and the north side of the river. That was like a news report from the 80s that seemed like to really sum up Austin for me, right? You got the south side of the river and the north side of the river and a big rope, and they just had a big tug of war, and that's Austin.
Oh, a literal tug of war. I thought this was like a metaphorical tug of war.
This was a big rope. And this was a lot of barbecue, and I forget which side won. but it was super fun. Yeah.
I love that. Well, Noah, this was great. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Okay, we are back with Liz, and it's time to wrap up the show with Keeping Tabs. This is where each of us shares a story, trend, or piece of pop culture we're following right now. And Liz, since you're our guest, what are you keeping tabs on?
There is a platform that I love. It's called the Book of the Month Club. And I don't know about you guys, but like I'm just feeling overwhelmed by everything that I'm reading on the internet, the news, social media. None of it is really making me happy. And so I've just been sort of on a tear reading novels, and it's been really hard for me to figure out what to read. And so I've found this platform called Book of the Month Club really helpful. They have an app. They're very millennial coded. Like all of the branding is super millennial coded. They have like little hats that you can like swag that you can buy that says like book person on it.
Oh, yeah, that's real.
You can get socks with like book reading emojis on them. Yeah. So this is like, it's so cliched that I'm into this brand.
Is novelty socks millennial coded? I feel like that's pretty millennial coded.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's extremely cliche that I would be into this, but they have been introducing me to some of my favorite books recently. I just read a book called Seduction Theory, which is about
it started off great, but then you added theory in there. It's
I know,
like,
sorry.
It's like The Rose and the Rapier or some sort of romance novel, but nope, now we're going to talk about the theory of it.
And it's so typical. It's about, and you know, as a former academic, it was just like catnip for me, but it's about these two MFA professors, one of whom has an affair and how they're working through it. But a student of both of theirs hears about this from them and then writes a novel that fictionalizes their relationship. And so what's really cool about this story is that the narration of this book is completely unreliable. You don't know like what's true and what's not throughout the process of reading it. And it's really fun. Anyway, for anybody who just can't deal with being online in 2025, I highly recommend novels. And Book of the Month Club is a good place to find some.
Josh, what are you keeping tabs on?
Oh my gosh. So I was on vacation last week. I tried to stay away from the media as much as possible.
Good for you.
But some stuff did break through. And one thing I need to bring up, okay, so I need to preface this by saying I do not want to get into the very depressing and scary reality of the National Guard deployment in Washington, D.C. Did you see the guy throw a Subway sandwich at an ice? I think it was ice. I think it was an ice person, and then run away. It may be the funniest video I've ever seen. Because he throws the sandwich and immediately starts jogging and people start chasing him. It's as funny as the shoes thrown at President Bush back in the day.
Oh my God. I miss the shoe. It's funny that I'm so fascinated by the like Gen Z like nostalgia for Bush days. There's so many clips of him like doing from back in the day that are circulating on TikTok.
It's quaint. Like I would love for him to be my president.
Well, I don't know about that, but
compared to what we have now, I'm like, let's just do a swap.
There's a lot of Iraqis who would beg to differ.
Yeah,
sure.
That's true.
We forget how terrible that presidency was. It ended in the worst economic crisis that we've seen since the Great Depression.
Yeah, very
endless
true.
wars. Yeah, I don't have any nostalgia for those days.
He does seem like a fun guy to hang out with, and I think that's what we're all hanging on to.
Yeah, but is that going to be the same reaction we have when we have like the next terrible president 20 years from now? President, I don't know, the 15th term of dictator J.D. Vance.
Oh.
In fairness, I would also say this about Trump. Like, he's horrible, but probably like you could have a really fun 2 hours with him.
I feel like it would get exhausting because you can't.
That's what I mean. That's why I said you got to time box it 2 hours.
Yeah. But back to what I really want to keep tabs on is Sandwich Guy, because apparently he's a DOJ official too.
This guy.
Oh my God. Yeah, that broke through my social media, and this sort of it made my day. Anyways, what are you keeping tabs on, Yas?
So, random historical fact for you is that Charles Dickens had a fuck ton of kids. And
really?
We don't talk enough about the fact that one of his son's nicknames and basically a name for the rest of his life was Plorn.
What in the Victorian hell?
How did you come across this? Like, first of all, like, what are you doing that you found this information?
Yo, your rabbit holes are crazy.
I couldn't tell you, but Plorn Dickens is an incredible
Dickens. Oh, God.
It's like a porn star name.
Not even, because it's too dorky.
Now I want to give someone the nickname Plorn.
Plorn, exactly.
Can we start calling Max Plorn?
Has never made more sense. Plornuffberg.
Oh my God. We need to do some episode. We should just do a rundown of best historical nicknames. Do like a top 10 most innovative nicknames.
Maybe that's my keeping tabs. Yeah, next week.
Plorn is definitely up there.
Plorn's got to be number one.
I feel like one of the Romney kids has a weird nickname.
The Wikipedia page of all of George Bush's nicknames for his staffer is a really good one. Karl Rove was named Turd Blossom.
They do the Matthew Broderick bit on the nickname thing in 30 Rock is really good. He called me Burger. He saw me eating a burger once. It wasn't even a burger. It was a sandwich.
Anyway, Plorn Dickens. That's it for Most Innovative Companies. Liz, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Our show is produced by Avery Miles and Blake Odom with help from Sam Gebauer and Hawa Atori, editing by Matt Toder, mix and sound design by Nicholas Torres and Tad Wadhams. Our executive producer is Josh Christensen. Remember again to subscribe, rate, and review, and we'll see you next week.